Hi, welcome to our show today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Civil War Museum in Bardstown in Nelson County, and it's one of the things that, a lot of people don't realize it's here. A lot of people do. A lot of people, whether they're Civil War buffs or history buffs or just into tourism, then you realize what kind of treasure we've got. But I don't think most of the people realize what kind of treasure we got. And not only that, they probably don't realize how it got here. So I've got the main man sitting beside of me here, the guy that was sort of the brainchild behind this, the mayor at the time, I believe, so Dr. Harry Spalding. Dr. Harry, first of all, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Okay.
Well, Doc, how did this come about? I mean, you tell me what year this all happened and who come up with this idea?
This is a long-term evolutionary project. It's been going on since 1980, really, and it's just kind of like Topsy. It grew. And we had, like to emphasize that it's a community project. It's not mine. It's the whole community has participated with it.
But it usually takes that one spark plug, and I know you won't say it, but you were the spark plug, and I think just about anybody that's been involved knows that.
Well, had a lot of help. People like Steve and yourself and Bob and everybody in the community that I asked for help helped. And I was really surprised, whether it was money or ideas or work.
Let's go back to the 1970s or 80s or whenever, and I remember as a kid when where we're sitting right now was where I used to take a shower because the swimming pool is right down the bottom of the hill. What happened to the swimming pool, and how did the swimming pool turn into the old Bardstown Village?
Well, it's a long story, but the city moved the pool, built a new pool after they bought the St. Joe property. And this became an eyesore down here with rusting fences and a little bit of everything, tin cans. So in 1980, we had a bicentennial celebration. We came up with the idea to clean this whole area up. Up above was a kind of a city dump too at the time. And we cleaned it up and we built a mill and a blacksmith shop, just as a project, bicentennial project. Well, it was partially mine, but other people were involved too. I can't take credit for it all. And then we kind of grew from there. And then we bought this building about a year or two later. It was the old city powerhouse and ice house and the water treatment.
Well, I was in the city house and the ice house years ago, and this doesn't look anything like what that did back then.
Yeah, we've come a long way due to a lot of help and ideas. But at the time, two guys, Jack Harrison and John Sonny, had a little Civil War collection, and they agreed to put it here. Later on, Steve joined them and became the spark plug in the Civil War collection process. And we after 10 or 12 years, we got some money from the state. The state actually bought the property, and with the money that we got, we renovated this building. Steve's ideas and a lot of other people's ideas about how we should do it. Actually, we hired somebody at the time, but to help with the basic floor plan.
Well, the state doesn't usually jump on projects like this unless you twist their arm pretty good or you have a pretty good product to sell. How did you convince the state to get involved with this?
We were lucky. At the time, Kenny Rapier was the whip, head of the whip, or the whip leader in the House, and his cousin, Rapier Smith, was the Parks Commissioner. So we got Parks to buy it. Twisted an arm or two, but they were most generous and most helpful, and I'll be eternally happy for what they did.
Well, before we get into the Civil War part of it, there's a lot of cabins down here. Now, where did those cabins come from? I know they're not originals, but they're replicas of something. Somebody had to put those together.
Well, most of them came from Nelson County and were donated by people out in the county. there were so many, I can't name them all, but I appreciate Bobby Bobble gave us one, and the Greenwell family gave us one, and a number of other people contributed. The Vowell family from out south end of the county, and we had to move them, but that was kind of labor of love, and I used my kids. Probably violated some laws in the process, but got and other people helped. My nephew Tom did a lot of work on the cabins, and I think even Steve came down and helped a little bit with ideas anyway.
Yeah, and we just want to make one thing clear. They are all original cabins.
Yes,
They were on local farms. And then we just moved.
Well, so they're not replicas then. They are original cabins.
They're
They
original
just weren't original here.
Right.
No, and they served a little different purpose. Like the tavern was a old log house. Came from the Rowan farm initially. But when we moved them here, we decided to make a village out of it, and gave them dedicated purposes like a tavern and a blacksmith shop and a still house.
Yeah. Then you got a mill. I know the mill actually works down there.
Yeah, well, the mill is the one cabin that didn't come from Kentucky, or from Bardstown, in Nelson County. It came from Flat Gap, Kentucky, and it was part of the Renfrew Valley setup at one time. Yeah. And we bought it, and with the help of R.E. Kelly, who was a city engineer, and some of his help, we brought it in and reconstructed it. And it kind of, like I said, it grew from there.
We got an Indian village as well over there, and I know that come a little later.
Yes, that was process of development. It all was kind of an evolutionary project.
Nothing happened all at once.
Kind of grew like topsy, that's right.
Well, I know one thing that we talked about, I think Bob Llewellyn brought it up a few weeks ago, we were talking, and it surprised me, and I didn't even know it. You said that down there where the little dam is still a remnant of the old swimming pool.
Yeah, it was the upper end of the swimming pool. And when Ari fixed up or cleaned up rather, the old swimming pool and built the walls down either side for the creek, he left that part of the swimming pool there as a dam. And they had a natural mill pond right behind it. So it turned out fine.
But why is this a Civil War museum now? What's there's a lot of things you could have done. There's a lot of things could have been Frontier, could have been Bardstown. This is a Civil War museum for some reason.
Well, the main reason is we had some collectors of Civil War artifacts who were excellent. Steve and his partner used to go out every weekend somewhere and find artifacts.
Steve's never been fully introduced.
Well, I'm going to go right now as next is Steve Munson here with us. So Steve, got your mic there a little bit. Now, you are a Civil War buff, I know. Obviously, I've talked to you several times, and it's something that's become a passion to you, is collecting Civil War. I know I could go to these places, and this stuff doesn't mean a lot to me, not because I'm not a Civil War buff. To some people, it's a treasure. To some people, it's just a piece of machinery or something like that. How do you know what's what and what's real, what's authentic?
Well, I was lucky. I got started early. My grandfather was a volunteer at the Speed Museum in Louisville, and he was a milkman. And he used to let me ride around on his milk truck on Saturdays. And when he delivered the milk, that's when he used to have the bottles on the front porch. And he would do that, and he knew everybody on a first-name basis. He had the bug. So he kind of passed the bug to me and taught me everything I knew about Civil War artifact. And plus, it's like Harry's got, you had mentioned, how do you twist these people's arms? You got a passion for something. My grandfather had a passion. He had the passion to do something down there. And that passion is kind of hypnotic. You want to get involved when you're around people like that. So, we started collecting, and back in the 50s, I remember my grandmother would be mad as heck, and he used to, we'd get an artifact, and I'd slide down the coal chute with it and hide it down in the basement so she wouldn't find it. And so we had a nice little collection near the coal bins down in the basement. But he was well read in Civil War history, and had my great grandfather was a Confederate general, and a poor Confederate general, But we had, been passionate about the Civil War, and then I think I was lucky enough that when the first centennial come around in '61, I was I think I was 11 or 12 years old, and then that's when all the states were behind it, and everybody was printing in the newspaper what happened in their towns, and that was great, especially if you're a Kentuckian and passionate about Kentucky. So we learned a lot, and at that time, the stories were still fresh in a lot of people's minds, because their grandfathers were still alive, So I think the last Civil War soldier died in the 1950s, early 50s, and so anyway, it was just contagious and collected with Jack Harrison.
The Civil War is a topic that is very contagious. Once you get into it, it makes you want to learn more all the time.
Well, I know when I'm around you, I usually learn something every time, because there's a lot of battles that even went on in this local area that I never had any idea that went on. And you can name people's names who came through here.
Yeah.
Some pretty famous people came through Bardstown.
Sure. Yeah, Bardstown, Nelson County has a lot of Civil War
Sort of like
history.
a crossroads. Wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, they had all sorts of things. Guerrillas and Morgan's men came through 2 or 3 times, and all the Braxton Bragg's army got as far as Bardstown, had to turn around and go back. So it's got a lot of history.
Yeah, a lot of famous people.
Well, let's say Steve's great-great-grandfather was a Confederate general, but I'm sure we had as many Union people here as we had ex-Confederates, as far as
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Well, we in the artifacts here, we specialize mostly in Kentucky, and then when you research a guy in his unit, and we got a great balance. Bob and I talked about this balance of Union and Confederate, and of course the Union was here, and there's great books that have been written by Harry and Dixie Hibbs, and of all the action that happened around here in Bardstown, and hundreds and hundreds of Union units were here, Confederate, like I said, guerrillas were here. And when we research all these guys, you see it, Bardstown, Kentucky, Kentucky. So it's pretty incredible.
Well, I know, Doc, I was up to Spalding Hall a little while back, and apparently that was the hospital for everybody at that time, wasn't it?
Yes, it sure was. And there were a lot of the houses around town that ended up being hospitals. They would take in people from battles, mostly Perryville, but other battles. One of John Hunt Morgan's prime lieutenants was shot in the head with shrapnel, and he was taken care of by a local doctor for a week, and then
Basil Duke.
Yeah, Basil Duke. And they came and picked him up in a carriage and took him south afterwards. But there's a lot of medical history here too, as well as the military history.
Well, I know we talked one time about it wasn't necessarily the Battle of Bardstown, but they had a skirmish. They had different names for different things. I mean, I don't know how this is officially works out, but we've had some conflicts, and put it that way.
Well, I think it was a battle, and Steve thinks it was a battle, and it was written up in a book as being the Battle of Bardstown, and Terry's Texas Rangers, which was one of the most famous regiments in the Civil War. On their battle flag, they have Bardstown on it because they fought the Battle of Bardstown. So
They said it was their finest hour in their memoirs when they wrote their books of the Terry's Texas Rangers, and the finest hour of the Texas Rangers was the Battle of Bardstown.
Well, that's what I said. It's fascinating, all the stuff that went on here, and I don't consider myself a youngster, but there's people a whole lot younger than me that probably has no idea what went on just right here in their own hometown. And it's, 150, 175 years ago.
yeah,
So, well, the Union Army came through after Bragg left.
yeah, and then they occupied the town for a while.
General Beale.
But there are all sorts of comings and goings of the various armies during the Civil War.
So what made Bardstown so attractive? Is it just happened to be in the right spot, or what?
Well, we were kind of at a crossroads.
Crossroads, yeah.
The Southern armies coming north, particularly Braxton Bragg's invasion of Kentucky in 1861, he got as far as Bardstown and couldn't get any further. And then of course, the Union armies coming south. It was kind of a natural path south right through here.
Now, I know a lot of stuff going on near here, obviously, like Wakefield and areas like
Right.
that. I mean, there was a lot of activity going on, whether it's a Quantrill or some of his people coming through here.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, plus too, you have Benjamin Hardenhelm,
Ben,
Bardstownian.
yeah. Ben Hardenhelm he was born in the house where I live now,
Oh,
as a
really?
matter of fact. Yeah,
Well, your house, it was sort of the headquarters at one time or something.
yeah, it was Braxton Bragg's headquarters for a week or 10 days before he retreated.
He doing renovations while he was there?
No, I don't know how much time he spent there. He did a lot of politicking around between here and Frankfurt, but that was his headquarters for a while.
Well, there's also another. Well, you were telling me we had brought one artifact from down up the Opera House down here, William Preston, and I was explaining him. You know, he went to college here at St. Joe's and St. Catherine. He goes, oh yeah, he said he carved his initials on my door.
And one of the bedrooms, he carved his initials.
Well, I think
He
y'all
put
sent his
W-
family the
W-
bill on that
W-
one.
Yeah.
Well, we had a lot of people doing some carving. I know Jesse James, when he was here, he'd carving into the window panes to prove he was here so he wouldn't get...
What about the upper buildings? The Women's Museum and the Military Museum, blah, blah, blah.
You know, the Women's Museum, the Military Museum, what went on up there at that time?
Well, that is kind of a process of the evolvement of it.
They call it the Opera House. When I was a kid, I remember it being a body shop.
Well, it was, but it was an opera house, and they had silent movies there. They had a little bit of everything.
Really?
But the drama bought the house and the house next to it, or bought the opera house and the house next to it. They were going to make a year-round venue up there, and they found out it was going to cost too much money, so we took it rather than just let it go to waste.
Now, when you say it's an opera house, I mean, did they actually have musicals in there?
Yeah, they had traveling
Really?
small-time operas come through.
Yeah.
Built about 1908, I think.
Right. Well, remember the most famous one? Y'all remember the story of Judge Roy Bean? Have you ever seen the movie?
I've
Judge
never
Roy-
seen the movie.
Lily Langtry
Yeah,
that he chased around.
yeah. Lily Langtry performed
She
here
performed there.
one time. Yeah, she was getting a load at the time, but she performed at the Opera House.
Now, up at the Opera House now, as we're talking about this part we're sitting in right now, being the Civil War Museum, you've actually expanded. I mean, and we not only have Civil War in this building, but you've expanded into just about every war there is possible to have that we've ever participated in.
Yeah, we used the Opera House for expansion. We ran out of space down here and used some of that for expansion of the Civil War Museum. But we had a lot of other military history here in the community that needed to be displayed. And we had some other collectors who had collected things like Dr. Mickey Anderson, World War I, World War II artifacts, and had quite a collection. And it needed a space to display them in, so we took them up there with help of Bob and some of his other board members. It's been done.
Yeah, Bob from Bob Llewellyn, if you don't know, is every time I come down here, he's here doing something. I mean, I don't know if he doesn't get paid anywhere near enough, so I'll have to say that for him because up there working.
What about Hal Moore?
Hal B. Moore.
Well, about just after he performed his feats over in Vietnam and became famous, is when we built it. So we called him, and he said we needed some artifacts, and he sent us some. He sent us his fatigue jacket and sent us his boots. And
If anybody's ever seen the movie with Mel Gibson, that's sort of the highlight, is showing his boots, first boots on the ground and last boots to leave.
yeah, that's right.
And we have the boots.
Yeah, and he was proud of that, and he sent us those, and we lent them back for a while. I had trouble getting them back. Well, we did. They're back up there where they belong. And some other artifacts of his up there. So we appreciate that.
Well, has it surprised you very much when this become, just an idea at one time, having a Civil War museum, then it expanded later, but it's surprising that you actually filled the place up. I mean, I'm sure when you first get the building, you said, well, maybe we'll have a sword, or we'll have a cannon, or we'll have something or another, but now the problem is you've got more stuff than you have space for. I mean, is that a surprise to you, or did you figure that was going to happen?
Steve is still collecting, so and they're prime artifacts. They're not all things you throw away. They're excellent artifacts.
Well, yeah, and we mentioned this one time before. I think this museum was rated one of the top 2 or 3 museums in the United States, all right, but especially this part of the country. And you said you've been to the Gettysburg one and everywhere else, and you said in your opinion, this rates at least as high or higher than that.
Yeah, I've been to all the Museum of the Confederacy in Richmond and Gettysburg and Shiloh and the rest of them, and I've never seen one any better. Been to Atlanta. They have spent a heck of a lot more money on these other museums, but they don't have anything better.
Well, that's the thing about it is I know people come here that are looking for something to do. I mean, even local people, you have a lot of school kids come here, and history is something that, again, as Steve mentioned a few minutes ago, you either develop a passion for, and sometimes you develop for it late in life. I know I did. I mean, when I was a kid, history meant absolutely nothing to me. As I get older, you know, it's coming down here, I'm absolutely fascinated. I spend hours. I went up to the upper museum and spent hours up there just walking around looking at things that 20 years ago I'd have breezed through and want to know where you had the popcorn. I mean, it's
yeah, it's grown, and we've all gotten the disease. It's something we all are impassioned with, and I don't think it's going to get less. I think it's going to improve.